Right, can everybody see the parent meeting slideshow presentation? Just give me a thumbs up if you can, please. Super, thank you all.
Yeah, same thing happened to Rebecca.
Look.
Evening.
Why is the video not working?
Okay, so welcome everybody. Firstly, thank you for joining us. Greatly appreciate your time. We are going to be recording this webinar. I know that there's some power issues in Westboro and some people are without, so we're going to send an email out for anybody that missed it, isn't able to connect via the link or so on. So if you could help me, please mute your mic. I've got the mute all function on. And then we're going to do a Q&A section at the last 15 minutes. So if you've got any questions, please write them down. We'll change the mute function towards the end. And that way we can answer any questions that you guys as parents have. As I mentioned, the video recording, we're going to send the slides, the video recording out tomorrow, as well as protocols for team camp this week. So what players should expect as they show up to 135 fields. So let's start. Firstly, thank you. We appreciate your time. It's a Sunday evening, so we apologize if we've interrupted dinner time, but we do greatly appreciate your time. As mentioned, 7 p.m. to 7:45 is the presentation. It's very content heavy. There's a lot of information, but there's a lot of things that we need to share with you. We'll do a Q&A section towards the end from 7:45 to 8. Respect of everybody's time, we'd like to be off by 8 p.m. if possible. The biggest thing we want to thank you for is your continued support and flexibility. We know it's been a real difficult last 5-6 months for everybody involved with soccer. And we appreciate the fact that you are still willing to put your kids in Best FC jerseys on the field. You trust our coaches and our directors with the development of your children and to provide a safe environment for them. The fact that so many of you are here this evening speaks volumes in the way that you'd like to interact with us as well. So thank you so much. We also really appreciate your flexibility. This is a super fluid situation. It's changing. The information we're getting almost every single day. So we're trying to keep you as updated as we possibly can, and we'll continue to do that throughout the full season. The conditions and restrictions we're under right now may be different from September 13th when the season kicks off. But we believe that we're in a very good position to provide a safe and positive environment for your players. Here's the agenda. We'll start with player and family safety. We're going to tie that into our values and philosophy for Best FC. Before we move on to the game modifications, we'll talk specifically about what was put out by Mass Youth Soccer and how that might impact Best FC. Then we'll talk about capacity limits and spectators, use of face masks for players and parents, in addition to coaches, referees, and then some logistical pieces, team camp, friendlies, and schedules, and so on. So we'll start off with this. The safety is paramount. It's always going to be the #1 priority. For every one of our coaches, we've just hosted a coaches meeting. And we can't stress enough how important it is that you feel safe with your children on the field with Best FC staff. Massachusetts is a self-certification state. That means simply by showing up to practice, players are self-certifying, or the parents of players are self-certifying that they have checked their temperature. It is below 100.4 Fahrenheit. That they are free from all signs and symptoms of COVID, and they have not been in contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID. That's really important. Simply by showing up to practice, you are self-certifying. Obviously, if you have any doubts whatsoever, kids running a temperature, kids got a cough that's just developed, please keep them home. Better to be safe than sorry. We will continue to send out updated Best FC protocols in regards to game day and training, just as we did for each of our periods throughout the summer with small group training, and when we went to more open play. But we're going to continue to follow many of the policies that we did during that period, and they're going to be in effect for quite a while. So hand sanitizer, players need to have a small bottle of hand sanitizer in their bag. They need to bring their face mask. It's going to be a face mask that loops around the ears, not a gaiter or one that ties behind the head. Social distancing wherever possible for players, parents, coaches, officials, everybody involved in the youth soccer experience. We're not going to be sharing equipment, and that really means nobody's going to be touching the soccer balls with their hands. Goalkeepers may touch the soccer ball with their hands if they're wearing goalie gloves. Otherwise, the only time a bottle will be touched with the hands is when it's being removed from the bag, and that will be immediately after a player has applied hand sanitizer. This full season, we're going to require parents to complete the health check on Team Snap. We've almost involved it fully into our culture with Best FC, where the vast majority of parents are very good at updating their availability via Team Snap. If you go onto Team Snap on the day of the event, 8 hours before, there's going to be a self-certification checklist. You go down, you click 4 or 5 yeses, you self-certify that you've done the health check with your player, you're good to go. We're going to try it this week to ensure that it's an effective way and method or tool for us to utilize for that health check. But we would require every Best FC player from U9 through U15 this fall to do that health check prior to attending any Best FC activities. We need to track attendance for everything. Games, practices, and this includes parents on the sidelines as well. It's not just a requirement indoors for hockey. We should also be have the parents' contact details if they attended a practice or game in case we are asked by the DPA. Excuse me. These are our protocols. If a player or coach tests positive for COVID, please notify us ASAP. We have had a couple of situations where we have been notified, and we're very, very grateful that that's happened, because the departments of public health, the local health departments, aren't as quick, because the data has to be uploaded to a central database, then determine whether it's going to be investigated by contact tracers and so on. The quickest way we can find out is by a direct email or phone call. Our job then is to notify any parents of players who may have had close contact with an individual who has had a positive case. That team will therefore suspend all soccer activities for a minimum period of 14 days. So should a player test positive, that team then suspends soccer activities for 14 days to ensure that the virus, if somebody had a negative test after 3 days, it may stay dormant for a longer period, and that player may be in contact with other players. The local health department is going to be providing Best FC advice on what else to do should we be required to make any more communications with players and families, in a similar way that the individual who tests positive will be receiving information from their health authorities, whether it's the local DPH, contact tracing. Massachusetts has actually contracted a third party to do most of the contract tracing for them. It should go without saying, siblings and household family members of a player with a positive test must also quarantine. It's not just that team, it's if a player tests positive, they and their family also needs to quarantine, should not participate in Best FC activities. Reopening Massachusetts is an ever-evolving process. As I said, that new information is coming out on a daily and weekly basis. Our stance is that there's a need and a desire for kids to play soccer. We've all seen the positive physical and emotional benefits that having players out on the field and interacting with their peers has had. I can tell you my son had a play date, a 6-year-old interacted with a 6-year-old for the first time in 5 months. That wasn't a cousin. He loves his cousins, but they're not 6-year-old boys who he can roughhouse with. And the positivity that came from it, it's something I'll probably never forget, that experience. So we really do feel that there is a need and great benefits to having players out on the field, not only from a physical standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint as well. This is something we have to understand. Each family's risk tolerance and values are going to be different. We respect you, we respect your family. If for any reason that you state you're uncomfortable with any policy that Best FC is adhering to or choosing to follow, we completely respect and understand that. There will be nothing held against anybody for any decision that you make in the best interests of your children. A little bit of background on how Best FC is structured. So Best FC is a member of US Club Soccer. So US Club Soccer sits under the governing body, which is US Soccer. US Soccer runs the men's national team, women's national team, youth national teams, and they're also in charge of referees and so on in the United States. Below them, there's several different youth governing bodies. US Youth Soccer, US Club Soccer, AYSO, and SAY are the 4 big ones. US Club Soccer in New England and Massachusetts runs the New England Premiership. So our chain of command, for want of a better term, is Best FC, New England Premiership, US Club Soccer, US Soccer. Although Mass Youth Soccer, the guidance has been followed by the majority of organizations in Massachusetts, Best FC are not members of Mass Youth Soccer, nor are they required to follow the protocols of Mass Youth Soccer. That's an important distinction to make. Best FC is also not related with the MIAA. I will share now that we are really hopeful and positive that a high school season will go ahead, but our decisions are not based upon the interpretations of rules or the policies that the MIAA puts out. Locally, we're governed by what the EEA puts out on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and then we hope that we would follow what the New England Premiership provides in terms of guidance for the full season. We expect updated details from the New England Premiership this week. They've just experienced a change in leadership. They also deal with play across 5 states in New England. So they're not just concerned with Massachusetts, it's what's going on with the other states as well. And they're trying to figure out at the moment how play in New Hampshire might impact Massachusetts and rules and so on. So as soon as we receive additional information, we're going to provide that to you as parents. So this is really, for me, the most important slide of this evening. And for us as an organization, 3 years ago when I came in, we sat down with the coaches. We went through a year-long process of developing or identifying what our core values were, how that related to our style of play, who we wanted to be as coaches, what types of players we wanted to create. And I think it's very much linked to the experiences that we're currently having and our behaviors and what we're hoping the behaviors that we're exhibiting will have. So the first core value we have is family. We care about every single member of the Best FC family. That's not just the players on the field. That's the team behind the team. That's you guys on the sidelines. That's the siblings who kick around the ball on the sidelines with mum and dad. That's grandma and granddad that support your child and their soccer experience. We're committed We take our duty of care for your children with a great deal of responsibility. In terms of the environment we're looking to create, we want to provide a safe environment emotionally, as well as one that's safe health-wise and wellness-wise. And we want players to be able to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and view them as learning opportunities. Respect is going to be a big one this season with potential modified rules. We hope that every single interaction that a Best FC player has with anybody else in on the soccer field, whether it's a coach, player, parent, referee, is a positive one. We want our players to treat everybody with the utmost respect, and we as coaches are role models for that behavior. And the last one is humility, which is very, very, very important at the moment, because this situation is so much bigger than any of us. We recognize that we're not necessarily in control of our own destiny. We're doing our very best to try and give players opportunities to be out on the field, given the restrictions that we have. But we also know that it's not just about the players. You as parents play a really critical and important role in their soccer life, for want of a better term, as do many other people. This is the Best FC mission statement. Best FC provides opportunities for committed youth soccer players to fulfill their potential on and off the field by providing holistic soccer programming delivered by highly motivated and nationally qualified staff. Just to touch upon our staff, something that I know Paul and I and Maria are really proud of is we retained every single staff member. And we're one of the only clubs, if not nationwide, certainly locally, that retained every single staff member. And in large part, it's because of the values, because of the communication, because of our transparency with those staff members. And they enjoy their job, they enjoy working with your children. For us, this red bolded 2 words in the top line is what this full season is all about. It's about providing opportunity. We recognize that there's going to be changes in potentially competitiveness. There's going to be some schedules that are going to be interrupted. For us, it's about providing opportunities for players. And this is our style of play. So I'm going to frame this with the reference of the modifications to the game that came out from Mass Youth Soccer earlier this week. And I want to go through our style of play and our attacking and defending principles to show really how we use or the structure of the game and what we're looking to teach players from the earliest age group to as they progress through high school. So we want our teams to be protagonists. That means they're proactive. They're the team that controls the flow of the game. We want them to attack and defend with numerical superiority. So that at the youngest age groups, that's going to be about 2v1s. We're always looking to create 2v1s on attack and defense. We're going to prioritize playing forward in possession. So if we can play forward, we do. If not, then we'll keep the ball. And the last part is we want to win the ball as high up the field as possible. Defensively, we want our teams to be aggressive, win the ball high up the field so they can score goals. Our attacking principles we introduced from an early age. And to give you some insight into the color code in it, from U9 through U12, this is a focus for our age groups. So these are the attacking principles that really the style of play you should be looking for. By the end of that U12 age group, so that's currently the 2009s, this is what we hope they have a very good understanding of. We introduce many of the later colors at earlier ages, but we don't expect them to fully understand and be able to exhibit on the field a successful understanding of all of these attacking principles at the younger ages. Okay. Very simple to start with. If we've got the ball and we can, we shoot. If we can't shoot, we're going to pass or dribble forward. If we can't pass or dribble forward, we're going to try and create space so that we can pass or dribble forward. Okay. As we get down the list, it becomes a little bit more complicated with the movement off of the ball in order to create space. Soccer's an invasion game. We want to score more goals than the other team. To do that, we have to invade their space. In order to invade their space, we've got to make sure there's gaps between defenders. So our attacking principles go from simplistic, shoot if we can, dribble forward if we can, to if we can't do that, how are we going to create space and gaps between defenders so that we can play forward? Transition, if we lose the ball, we want to win it back as quickly as possible. So if we've we're attacking, we've got the ball, we lose the ball. That moment that we lose the ball, can we recognize it? Can we win the ball back as quick as possible? If not, can we then get compact and organized behind the ball? Very similar message when we're defending. If we now know we're defending, can the closest player to the ball pressure the ball so that we can protect our goal? Can the players around provide cover so the other team cannot play forward? If we make it compact and keep it compact, we close the gaps, the other team can't go forward, and we can still outnumber the opponent and hopefully win the ball. So it goes back to those 2v1s. Can we create a 2v1 defensively so that we can win the ball back together? Transition from defense to attack. Can we score as quickly as we possibly can? Win the ball, score. If we can't do that, it then becomes very similar to the attacking principles about creating and exploiting space. The types of player that we're looking to develop have these key qualities. Critical thinking is the number one. We want to develop players who can read and understand the game and empower teammates. We want to provide training environments that allow for those opportunities. In addition, we want our players to take initiative, be proactive, be willing to take risks, and be able to focus. There's also the technical, physical, and individual responsibility. So do the players take responsibility for their own development? The reason I'm sharing this with you, there are minimum mandatory modifications to the game of soccer that were published by the Massachusetts EEA last week. Soccer was originally listed as a high-risk sport, which was when we were restricted to social distance practices and only. It then got moved to the moderate risk sport. For 3.5 weeks, we were able to play with very little modifications until last week's messages came out. So the latest communication from the EEA defined moderate activities and said that they could play scrimmages in practice and play games against competition, so other towns or clubs, so long as they adhere to minimum mandatory modifications. These included significantly limiting contact, shortening activities, and using protective equipment. As discussed earlier, Mass Youth Soccer put out some modifications to the game that included taking away heading at all ages, removing permissible body contact, so shoulder to shoulder, taking slide tackles out of the game, and reducing frequent and high probability of player contact and closeness. So if you think of any time in the game where you're going to get a big group of players congregating together, the EA directive was trying to remove those instances. So to stop things like that happening, throw-ins became kick-ins, corner kicks weren't allowed to go into the box, and restarts became kicks. There's no dropped balls anymore. So to go through these individually and tying it back into our style of play, our play development philosophy, and our principles, heading isn't going to impact the U9s through U12s. They haven't headed before. So if your child is a 2012 through 2009, it's no different. At the U11v11 game, it will pose some challenges initially because there's a lot of space that needs to be defended, but typically you can defend against a long ball by heading the clearance away. With heading being removed from the game, it's going to mean that players have to become more intelligent in reading the game. They're going to have to step back. They're going to have to play with a goalkeeper potentially outside of his box to stop long balls over the top. And they're going to have to learn to improve their body shape, positioning, turning when defending so that they can stop balls just being kicked over the top of them and attacking players run onto them. It's going to be challenging. There's no doubt about it at 11v11, U13, 14. However, it is going to be very rewarding if players learn to defend and read the game. If they can learn to defend under these conditions without heading the ball, they're going to be all the better for it once these temporary modifications have moved away. Permissible body contact. So no shoulder to shoulder. There's very few times that shoulder to shoulder deliberately happens in a soccer game. Think of shoulder to shoulder as a charge in hockey or a check in hockey, sorry. Or an occasion in soccer where a ball goes over the top and you have an attacking and defensive player running in step going for the ball. That's what they're trying to take away, is that deliberate shoulder-to-shoulder contact. I have coached and observed many games and scrimmages, and almost all intermittent contact has been allowed. It's going to be very, very important to defend from goal side. Okay, so players who typically rely on hustle and muscle and pushing players off the ball are initially going to struggle with some of these new rule modifications. If they can learn to defend from goal side, be intelligent in the way they play, again, it's not going to be too much of an issue, and long term, the benefits are going to be great for that player. Slide tackles, again, U9 through U12, very rarely seen. They're not allowed at U9 and 10. At 13 and 14, you can still slide to block across, so long as you're not within that 6 feet. You can slide to keep the ball in play, but you cannot deliberately go in as a slide tackle. That would be, if it was a fair slide tackle under regular rules, it would be an indirect free kick. If it was a foul under regular conditions, it would still be a foul. I will let you know that instinct's going to take over. For many of the players who are used to playing under regular rules during the game, instinct's going to take over to stop a goal or to score a goal. It's typically okay in between the boxes, but as soon as it comes down to, do I concede or score, their instinct tends to take over because they're children. We have to allow this, because whether it's our team or the opposition team, and we have to understand the referee's decision in that moment of the game. There's going to be some goals scored that are a little crazy, that we may think are not fair. As parents, as coaches, we have a duty to take a step back and see the bigger picture. Some of the other changes, all throw-ins are kick-ins now. So ball must be placed on the ground, can be passed in. We, as Best FC, would like our players to get the ball in as quickly as possible, ideally to a teammate who is facing forward. That doesn't mean the pass has to go forward. It means that the person who receives the ball should be facing the goal that they're scoring towards. That enables us to then go forward in alignment with our style of play and our attacking principles. Technically, you're supposed to be 10 yards away from the kick-in at this moment. Haven't seen that asked for or implemented in any scrimmage so far. As long as we get the ball on the ground and in play as soon as possible, it presents very little challenges in the way that it changes the game. Corner kicks will present some challenges. Most teams are used to, when the ball goes out for a corner, everybody gathers in the box, there's a long ball into the box, there's a scramble, and usually it's cleared. I think I've seen our team score 2 goals from corners in the past 2 years. Now the ball cannot go directly into the box off of a corner. So all corners will become short corners, effectively. This is neither a good or bad thing. It's going to change the game at U13 and 14 for those the 11 age groups. But the number of times that a player can accurately cross a ball in to the penalty area from U9 to U12 to a teammate at the right time is very slim. So in terms of keeping possession, creating scoring opportunities, I think it's going to be a positive for some of our players. These are temporary modifications. We have to think long-term about it. Again, I can't stress enough, U9s through U12s, there's really not going to be that many changes to the way the game is played. The biggest difference you'll see is the kick-ins instead of throw-ins. 11v11, there may be some more challenges presented, but I'm confident with the coaching staff that we've got, the environment that we create, they're still going to enjoy the game. It's still got the same structure. You're attacking, defending, scoring goals, and stopping goals. Very few of the goals are scored or conceded from set pieces at those age groups. How the modifications are introduced and discussed and trained are going to be key to how the players view them. If we as coaches talk negatively about the modifications, then the players are going to vent, they're going to be frustrated, and they're going to view that as an overall negative situation. The same goes for parents. By all means, as soccer people, we're frustrated. We don't want to be playing under these conditions, but we recognize that these are the conditions we're under. So we would really ask for your help to frame these in the right manner. The perception of the players will go a long way towards their own enjoyment and the potential learning opportunities that they will have from these changes. As I said, it presents new challenges. Me personally, I think it's going to present some really good challenges that we can't necessarily create the environment for in training. I'll give you an example. We have some very, very athletic players on the boys team that I work with, and defensively, they rely on their athleticism. They shoulder to shoulder, they don't read the game, they just let the other team play and react to it. Those players are going to be forced to have to learn to read and understand the game to be successful at defending. Long term, it's going to be a net benefit for those players. Short term, it's going to be a challenge. So our stance on the modifications, we will adopt Mass Youth Soccer's modifications for team camp and all activities until the New England Premiership provides additional guidance and updates. We have modified games that are supposed to take place on the 29th and 30th of August. For those games, we have calls scheduled for Thursday and Friday with the opposition to clarify what rules we'll be under. We're hopeful that New England Premiership will provide guidance prior to that time. As I said, it's such a fluid situation. We're just trying to provide the updates as soon as we can. Next piece is capacity limits. So these are the pieces that are really important for us as it relates to training. Facilities with multiple fields being used by more than one group of 25 at a time. New England Baseball Center, even though it's one baseball field, it is a very large full-size baseball field with several smaller soccer fields within it. Therefore, we're able to have more than one, so 4 at any one time, teams that will train with at least 14 feet of space between those teams. For our purposes with Best FC, we need to keep those teams separate at all times. So we're not going to be scrimmaging other teams during training this fall until we receive guidance otherwise. Your training, your whole environment will be kept within your team, because for contact tracing and also the safety of the players in terms of how many players they're exposed to, we need to ensure that we're performing an adequate duty of care. For games and practices, we will limit spectators to 1 per player. Okay, this is really important. There is a maximum of 100 spectators allowed at a facility. If we have a facility that has 2 games going on at the same time, at Melican, there will be a 9v9 and a 7v7 game going on at the same time. If every player, maximum roster size of that 7v7 field, so 2 teams of 14, or 2 parents and siblings, that could easily equal 100 spectators for that 7v7 game only. We are required to keep it gathering sizes 100 for that whole facility. So it's 1 parent per player. Siblings can attend if there's no other option for care available. For obvious reasons, we'll recommend that grandparents don't attend this season. If there's no other option for drop-off or pickup, we do understand that each family's individual circumstances is different. We are going to get very good at using Facebook Live and whatever other streaming technologies there are, maybe taking in turns so that we can provide opportunities for people to view the game. Facial coverings. A primer. Best FC is an educational organization. For us, this isn't about politics. These are the restrictions we're under. We're doing what we can to the best of our ability to put players on the field. The player safety is key. Okay? Not only do we want to protect them, ensure by wearing masks, but we need to let them know that masks should not be worn 100% of the time through vigorous activity. That's the responsibility of the coaches and our staff, directors, myself and Paul, to ensure that the coaches are adequately training the players to recognize the right times that they can remove masks during play. As it stands, players need to wear masks during play. They should have their mask on at any time they are within close proximity to any other player. Close proximity being 6 feet. It is still contact soccer. You can still tackle, there's still going to be intimate contact. However, masks are required. If that player is, for example, the ball goes out for a goal kick, that player is 6 feet away from any other player, they can remove their mask. We'll go through some practical examples of that now. This is the exact quote that came from the EA. It's a terrible example for soccer because it would be very difficult for a player to remove a mask when they were running at full tilt down the side of a field. However, the bottom 3 lines are important. Must wear, where possible, play with the facial covering on. So wherever possible, our players will wear masks during play. They can remove it if they're in goal. They can remove it if they're not in close proximity to other players. Players are also required to wear them on the sidelines and during any other activity on the field. They should take frequent breaks. So I can give you some practical examples from the experiences I've had in the past week, coaching with players wearing masks. The majority of the time, the players were not directly involved with the play. They removed their mask. Now, we are requiring the masks to be ear loops, so they can't be the gaiters. They can't be the ones that tie around the back of the head. Strongly recommended that they have the elastic here. The players can either pull them off by the ear loops, which is recommended by the state. What we're seeing a lot more of is the players moving their masks down onto their chin. We will recommend that the players, strongly recommend the players remove them by their ears. That's what we'll teach them. In the flow of the game, you're going to see them move them down like this naturally. It's typically what they do when they're in the car, grocery store, or so on, as I'm sure you've seen and observed by your own children's behavior. We cannot stress enough, 100% of the time is not the right thing to be doing when you're playing soccer to wear a mask. The players will be taught to take frequent breaks wherever possible, when the ball leaves play, when it's not on their side of the field or their area of the field if they're playing in attack and defense. It's our responsibility as coaches to teach them to use the mask correctly, given the conditions that they're under. The other piece of this is we're not going to be having players go full tilt for 15 minutes at a time now. During sessions, training sessions, we have to periodize so that they might be going for 3 or 4 minutes initially so that they can adequately take a breather, and we're not going to put any children in danger. Parents are required to wear masks on the sidelines. They must also social distance. So anybody who comes to observe a Best FC session must wear a mask. At Melican, for our home games, if we're there, we will be putting down X's for people to put their chairs when social distancing. Something that's going to be a little new and different this year is we're going to recommend that the players bring out a fold-out chair to the field so that they have a seat on their sideline. They will also be social distance on the sideline. We've tried to set it up so that we have staggered benches, for want of a better term, so that we have a line of 5 with 5 behind them and so on, so that it's easier for them to interact with one another through the game. Some new and interesting sights for sure, but we're all just getting used to it and trying to figure out the best way to get the players on the field. Mask responsibilities. Going to and leaving the field, it's a responsibility of the parent. As soon as they step on the field, it's our responsibility as coaches to ensure that we're adhering to the guidelines. It is never the referee's responsibility that they're adhering to the guidelines. The referees are not going to be mask police. There's not going to be indirect free kicks called for players not wearing their mask. There's going to be occasions where a player scores a goal with their mask on their chin. There's going to be occasions where a player makes a tackle with a mask on their chin. What matters is we're doing our very best to teach the players to ensure that they are, whenever in close proximity, using the masks wherever possible. Again, just to repeat, parents are required to wear masks at any Best FC activities. This is a non-negotiable. If we want the kids to play, we have to follow the rules. We have had examples of third parties taking pictures of our soccer camps during the summer and sending them in to police and local health authorities. The last thing we want to do is get shut down in the middle of the game. We'd request that you be role models for the players. So some brief expectation pieces. As Best FC parents, we would hopefully never ever have to hear you address the referee, opposition players or coaches in a derogatory manner. The culture of our teams is really important to us. And you as parents play a really crucial role as role models to show the correct interactions that you should have with other people, opposition on the soccer field. I personally will be very, very upset if anybody makes any derogatory comment to any referee during the game, particularly given the conditions that they're under. There's new rules and modifications, new stresses. They have to wear masks. Lots of them are young. We have lots of children in our program who are referees and lots of parents who have children who are referees. Think of them as your own children, not the 65-year-old ones, but the majority of them are going to be young. We'd ask that you please refrain from coaching on the sidelines. Okay, and a really easy way to think of this is, does what you're saying impact the decision-making of the player? If you're telling a player, press, go get it, and the game isn't telling them that it's a good time to press and they're alone, then you may actually be hurting their decision-making, but also hurting the overall team. If you think back to our defensive principles, it's pressure with the closest player and cover. It's never pressure alone. Okay? So can we go together? So if you're telling a player to shoot or pass before they get the ball or as they've got the ball, you're potentially changing the decision that that player can make. If you're saying, great pass, well done, love your hustle, keep going, great sportsmanship, the louder you are, the better. We really appreciate encouraging the players, showing them that you care, G'ing them up if they make a mistake. It's okay, you'll get them next time. Okay, but we really would appreciate if you try not to coach from the sidelines during games. How can you help the players with their development? Stay informed and stay involved with your team. Myself as a coach, I send out either on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, this is what I thought from the game. These are some things we're working on in training. And these are the reasons why. It links into the car ride. When the kid gets in the car after a game, whether they've had a good game or a bad game, we don't want to be analyzing their performance. Telling them, well, you played a lot better last week. Or I don't think you're very good at right back. Because think of how that makes that child feel. Okay. Two really great questions, right? I'm going to share three really great questions that you can do is, what did you enjoy most about the game or training? What did you learn from the game or training? And what do you want to eat? If you stick to those three questions after a player has had a game or practice, I can guarantee your relationship regarding soccer is going to improve. The next part of that is if you go in the backyard, play with them. Don't train them. Now, it might be slightly different for our older players who are asking for it. Dad, can you do this with me? Or Mum, can we go out and take shots? That's fine. But we want you to let the players lead that process. It's the best thing in the world when I hear so-and-so broke a lamp in their house. I'm not going to mention the name, but a boy, 2009 player, broke a lamp in their house because they were practicing. That's brilliant for me. That's what we want to hear. Or I go outside and we do headers in the pool and we're practicing heading technique. If you as a parent can help use those or help the player in their development and provide play opportunities rather than trying to force them to train, that is going to help them to develop a love for the game of soccer. On to team camp. Please wear blue on Monday and Wednesday, red on Tuesday and Thursday. There may be some coaches who will individually request you to bring both colors. Okay, but if your coach doesn't request you to bring both colors, wear blue on Monday and Wednesday, red on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Players must bring a face mask that loops behind the ears, shin guards, pumped up soccer ball, cannot stress that enough, pumped up soccer ball, and hand sanitizer. We are playing at 135 fields, which is grass, so we strongly recommend sunscreen, especially if you're a 230 or 430 group, bug spray as well. Pre-season scrimmages, as mentioned, every team has at least 2 games scheduled. They should all be in your team snap. Tournaments are not allowed, so typically we'd have done some kind of pre-season tournament in the fall. So this is in lieu of doing a tournament. Additional communications are going to be sent later this week based on what we learned from the New England Premiership and our conversations with the opposition teams as to what the games will look like. In addition, if you're traveling to an away venue, almost every week, you are going to receive documentation of that venue's policies and procedures for COVID. It's part of the new world we live in. We have to recognize and understand that just as each of our children are individual, each of the fields we play at are going to have different rules, different circumstances. All of our training sessions will be at NEBC this year. The training schedule has been sent to our team managers and coaches. So if it's not already in your team snap, it should be by tomorrow. Slight change this year to scheduling. There's a required 20-minute crossover period. So we have to have 20 minutes between Group A that comes in and Group B so that there's no crossover for contractation. The drop-off and pick-up protocols for those of you that did small group training are going to be exactly the same. Okay? Each day the players will get dropped off, they'll find their coach, hand sanitizer, go to their marked off cone, drop their bag down, they're ready to play. Okay? If parents leave their cars, they are required to wear masks. Game schedules. Games will begin September the 13th and run through the second weekend of November. The majority of our games are local. Okay? We're in the central and west brackets for almost all of our teams. I think the U13 girls, so 2008 girls, you guys are the only people that will be likely to go out of state based on the competition. Schedule should be expected for games by late August. They're currently in the hands of the NEP. They have fields, they have dates for the games, they just don't have times for those games. All right, so we don't have a chat box, but what I'm gonna do is stop sharing my screen and I'm gonna unmute or allow you guys to unmute yourselves. So if you do have a question, please raise your hand and I'll call you out. So there is a raise hand function on here, or you can speak over. And if there's two people that speak at once, then I will ask one person. So, any questions, please? Austin Miller.
Hi. I'm just curious, do you have any recommendations for masks? I know that might be it, but just as far as like sports masks go, just there's so many options out there.
Yeah, so something that's, it's got to be dual layered, so it can't be a single layer of cloth. The regular cloth masks when they get wet, can be more difficult to breathe in. So a lot of the sport manufacturers, I'm going to say Adidas because that's our sponsor, and we have those types of masks, but it's kind of like a neoprene almost texture to it. But the sports mask by any of those sports manufacturers are going to be probably the best suited. I'm not an expert on it. Me personally, I prefer the disposable ones, but it's going to be based on your child and what the best fit is. So, but avoid anything that's very thick, but know that it has to be more than one layer.
Thank you.
Additional questions? And please don't hesitate to ask questions because there's lots of people thinking the same thing.
Hey Rob, this is Jennifer Kelly.
Hi Jen.
Hi, so for kids masks, I did discover that Adidas is completely sold out of all of their sports masks. So as a club, if they're one of our sponsors, do we have possibly an opportunity to order bulk, maybe for kids?
We will look into that for you. So it's, although they're a sponsor, it's more of a purchasing agreement, for want of a better term. So we would go through our vendor at soccer.com. If they're sold out individually, it's going to be even more difficult for us to buy them in bulk, I would say. Yeah. Additional questions? Come on, it can't have been that thorough. There we go, we got one.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? I have a question. Do you have any experience with the training masks that are used where you can actually control the flow of air?
The vent masks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so it's a difficult one because we don't necessarily know whether they'll be allowed or not based on the recommendations. I would say avoid them at the moment.
Okay.
They have event until we know further.
Okay. All right. Even for team camp?
Team camp will be okay with them. Team camp will be okay, but I would suggest that if they're going to be playing games at the weekend, they probably want to get used to a mask that they'd be using in the game.
Okay.
I don't think the referees potentially that we would be having are going to be informed on what masks are and aren't available or usable prior to those scrimmages. So I would always err on the side of caution.
Okay. I know for kids with asthma, you can open up that airflow.
Yep.
Because Shelly's been using his because his asthma is kicking up because of the weather change.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of where I was headed with him. He's been hitting that inhaler a lot, and I can just open up that airflow.
No, I appreciate that, and I will put in the ask not only to our state soccer association but at higher levels as well to figure out.
Okay, but well, at least for this week, he can run with those.
Yes, that would be
cool. Thank you,
Chrissy. Oh.
So I was just wondering. I was wondering if the coaches might consider practicing running down the field with or without masks, or flipping them on and off, as part of drills, because I bet that would help, during the gameplay.
Do you know what we had joked about it in the past about it's going to be part of our training regime to teach the kids how and when to take off masks. It's not a joke anymore, unfortunately. It's going to be part of what we do this week. This week, as much as getting them back on the field and touching the soccer ball, it's going to be familiarizing them to the new conditions that they're playing under and again modifications for the rules. So we will absolutely do that.
Great job tonight, Rob. Great job.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. So if you're unable to secure a mask that suits the kid, like right now we are using the disposable ones. So what will happen? They are not allowed to participate in the team camp or the game, or?
Disposable masks are fine. There are ways to help them fit a little bit better for kids, and there's lots of videos on YouTube and so on that if you tie a knot, then it provides a bit of a tighter fit in it. So I would just use a disposable mask if there's no other masks available. We had the discussion on our coaches call that we're all going to have spare masks in our bags for any soccer occasion. Should a kid forget it, and it's going to happen, should a mask break during the game, we're going to have a second option for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, I do have a question about quarantine for players on a single team.
Yeah.
If you are quarantining because of possible exposure from school, how does that impact the rest of the players on your team, and what's the responsibility for reporting that to our coaches?
Great question. I'm glad you asked. If you're quarantining, you're quarantining. So whether that's from school, whether that's from Best FC, if you've been contacted by a contact tracer or the organization and requested quarantine, then that's it. That's our stance on it. So it will happen during this fall where a school will have a case of COVID, and the notifications will go out that you should stay home for 2 weeks and isolate wherever possible. Just let us know. If we have a situation, we have a lot of players that come from Westboro, Southboro, and Northborough. If we have a situation where there's a cluster, games will likely be cancelled because we can't participate if we don't have enough players. We'll provide practices so long as they're safe. So as long as we know that none of the players showing up have had a possible exposure, we'll keep practicing for the 3 or 4 players that can until the people or the folks that are under quarantine are able to return. One of the conversations that we've had already is extending the amount of time we're going to be spending outdoors this fall so that we're able to make up any missed time for teams.
Okay, so if there's a player on our team that is quarantined, will we as players or families of that player who is in quarantine be notified, just so we can make the decision for ourselves if we then want to keep our child out for an extended period, even though it's not going to be a mandatory quarantine for the team?
No, that is, I mean, again, it's a very good question in regards to how many layers of contact tracing do you go. If we are determined by the local Department of Health, so if they say you need to let these teams know because they had close contact with them, then that may be the case. For our purposes, it would only be if a player on our team tested positive or a family member tested positive and we were notified, that we would then go out with that notification. So we wouldn't, for example, if a kid was quarantined from a Southborough school and they said to the coach, hey coach, I'm under quarantine, can't come to practice just in case, we wouldn't then notify that whole team and say a player is quarantined. Some of it has to do with the HIPAA regulations and how much information we're allowed to share. But the other piece is, again, it's dependent upon what the local health department does with their contact tracing and what they require us to do.
Okay, thank you. Great presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Nuri.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. It has been really, really great and very informative. So thank you very much. I have two questions. One is sort of piggybacking on Mary, I believe. If one of the players tests positive, we all quarantine, but now we live in Massachusetts where testing is pretty much readily available to all of us. What would happen if we get tested, all the players get tested and we come negative? What happens then? Is it mandatory absolutely 14 days regardless of the testing results?
Yes. Yeah, 2 weeks quarantine. So player gets notified on the Thursday, we can't return till 2 weeks later.
I see.
For the positive.
As a team.
Yeah, as a team. Unfortunately, that's the requirements of the Commonwealth and the local departments of public health. I'm not a scientist, but I know that the virus can stay dormant for a certain amount of time. So if somebody gets a test after 2 days and is negative, doesn't necessarily mean that they may not be positive. So that 2 week waiting period is defined for those reasons.
Mm-hmm. And those players that will go outside of the state, will they be required to be tested?
We will follow the Massachusetts or the Commonwealth's guidelines in regards to those games. So, for example, we wouldn't put our players on a field in Rhode Island currently because of the current restrictions for travel between Massachusetts and other states. However, New Hampshire and Maine, they would currently be allowed to play. We can't change the law in regards to what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Okay, so we will be notified by you or by the club to be tested a few days, actually 72 hours in advance.
No, you're not required to take a test. You would only, for a start, we wouldn't put our players into a position where they would be required to take a test to play a soccer game. That's not something we want to do, and we don't think it's a smart decision based on the risk reward. We do, in terms of the cross-state travel, it would just happen like it would be if you were going on a vacation and staying in a hotel for a weekend in New Hampshire or so on. It would only be based upon New Hampshire or Maine, which would be the only two states that we would travel to. What their requirements are for entry for Massachusetts citizens are, and vice versa, what Massachusetts requirements are should you cross state borders with those states. Currently, it's allowed. That, again, it's always a fluid situation, so that may change. But the question regarding positive tests and coming back, I know there's people looking into it, but for the time being, Best FC Policies is definitely going to be a 2 week quarantine period.
All right. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Stephen.
Hi, Rob. For the Central and West divisions for NEP, is this a change in division for any teams from prior years, or is there an actual attempt to get the teams more localized to closer towns?
So yeah, they've been recommended at six to eight group clusters. There's been a lot behind the scenes in regards to teams and clubs moving different leagues and so on. But from U11 and up, apart from the very highest level of play, NEP has always grouped teams by as close geographical location as possible. And that continues to be the case. This year, for some teams, they may not even travel more than 20 minutes for an away game. Other teams that, because of the way the league is formed, will have some games in Western Mass. So there's one or two club teams out in that area that typically get lumped into the central region. But for the most part, the travel isn't extensive for our teams.
Is there a possibility then that it would include teams from New Hampshire?
The large majority of our teams will not include teams from New Hampshire. Okay. Again, the 2008 girls might be the only team that should play them. New Hampshire teams for NEP typically participate in their North bracket, which includes the North Shore, North area of Boston. Bedford is about the closest the teams to us that would be included in those brackets. So we would be very, very unfortunate to have a team placed in those brackets, and they weren't when I last saw them. So.
Okay, thank you.
No problems. Rebecca.
Yeah, myself. Hi, Rob. We are new to BEST this year, and I ordered my son's uniforms, but they're not coming. I just checked tonight. They're not slated to come until September 23rd. What should he wear?
Firstly, welcome.
Thank you.
I've got just the man. I'm going to unmute Paul Mumby, who'll give you an update on uniforms. I've seen a lot of emails about delays.
Okay.
So with anyone that does have uniform issues, if you could let me know, and then I can kind of follow up with our rep from soccer.com. So if you want to just drop us an email, then I can kind of follow those up for you. As if you haven't got any uniforms for next week, I do have a few camp t-shirts that I can bring kids to wear for that week. So yeah, anyone that's interested, anyone at uniforms, email me. I'll bring some extras on Monday for you guys to wear for the week. Okay. Also for masks, we have looked into masks from soccer.com. We're looking for a price right now, but we will be sending something out. People interested in purchasing a mask, if there's enough people that want to purchase Best FC masks, then we will order them. But obviously, if no one's going to buy them, it's pointless us ordering the masks. But we will send something out probably tomorrow for people to order masks if they're interested. Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
All right. Any additional questions?
Hi, this is Kathy. I just had a quick question. In your slides, you said blue uniforms for Monday, Wednesday, and red for Tuesday, Thursday. In the email I got, it said the opposite. So which should they wear for tomorrow?
Well, firstly, thank you for catching that. I appreciate it. We're going to go with the most recent information, as we have to with everything now. So we're going to go with blue on Monday, Wednesday, and red on Tuesday, Thursday. I have had requests to put it in on TeamSnap, so I will go in and do that tonight as well. And as I mentioned earlier, you guys will all get emails later today, in the morning tomorrow, with updated protocols, so I'll include it in that. But blue Monday, Wednesday, red on Tuesday, Thursday.
Great, thank you.
Rob, it's David. Just wanted to let you know that the meeting was capped at 100 people. So a lot of people are going to hear this information for the first time tomorrow.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to try and get it up tonight and out tonight then, if that's the case. Appreciate that, David.
Thank you.
I think I just heard the puck drop in the Bruins game. So I really appreciate the time that you've taken with us tonight. Thank you again for trusting us with having your players on the field. We really appreciate the fact that you're willing to continue to support us. We care about your children. We're going to keep them safe. We're going to be open and transparent with our communication. So thank you very much. Take care, and we'll see you on the fields.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.